All right, let's jump right into this. Today, we are cracking open the blueprint of the world's largest democracy. Just imagine the year 1947 for a second. A newly independent nation is emerging, made up of over 500 distinct princely states, crazy linguistic variety, and deep cultural and religious roots. The task of uniting all of them under a single rulebook seemed absolutely, literally impossible. Yet they pulled it off. So welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking the complex architecture of the Indian Constitution, which is the exact framework governing over 1.4 billion people today. If you've ever wondered how such a massive, diverse nation actually maintains its democratic structure, you are in the right place.
Okay, let's start with a truly powerful thought from the chairman of the drafting committee, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar. He famously said that this document is not a mere lawyer's document, it is a vehicle of life. This tells us right from the jump that we aren't just looking at some dusty, static manuscript of rules. We're looking at a living, breathing entity designed to adapt to the spirit of age. It constantly evolves alongside the society it governs.
To keep things simple, we've broken this explainer down into 5 clear sections today. We'll start with the supreme legal document itself, run through its key features, look at where some of these global ideas actually came from, break down the structural framework, and finally look at how this impacts everyday life. Let's get into it.
Kicking things off with Section 1, the supreme legal document. So, to really understand this document, you first have to grasp its foundational gravity. It is the absolute supreme legal authority in India. What does that actually mean in practice? It means that literally all other laws in the country, whether we're talking about massive corporate regulations, civil codes, or just a tiny local ordinance, they all have to bow down to this single text. It lays out the entire framework for the government, defining everything from fundamental citizen rights to the state's specific duties. If a brand new law conflicts with the principles written here, boom, the courts will strike it down. It is the ultimate glue holding the nation together. And, the sheer scale of this text is staggering. It originally started with 395 articles, but it has grown to an astounding 448 articles across 12 schedules today. That officially makes it the lengthiest written constitution in the entire world. Why is it so incredibly long? Well, unlike the U.S. Constitution, which is actually quite brief and kind of leaves a lot of administrative details up to local legislatures, India's framers didn't want to leave anything to chance. They baked in exhaustive, meticulous details to ensure that marginalized groups were explicitly protected and that the division of federal power was clearly defined. They left almost zero room for ambiguity. The journey of this text perfectly demonstrates what Dr. Ambedkar meant by a vehicle of life. It was formally adopted in November 1949, and it officially came into force on January 26, 1950. But here's the kicker, it hasn't just stayed frozen in time since that day. With 104 amendments on the books up to the year 2023, you can really see this living document in action. It's constantly being tuned, refined, and upgraded to match the demands of the modern era.
Moving right along to Section 2, Key Features and Facts.
So, how do we make sense of all this? We can easily synthesize the core DNA of the Constitution using a super handy mnemonic, welfare. That stands for a written constitution, a federal system with a unitary bias, the lengthiest document out there, guaranteeing fundamental rights, establishing adult franchise, and forming a republic that is equal or secular. Let's just pause on that A for a second, adult franchise. Back in 1950, granting the absolute right to vote to every single citizen over the age of 18 was a huge, unprecedented leap. For a newly independent and largely uneducated populace at the time, that was an act of profound trust in the common person. Oh, and regarding the republic being secular and socialist, those specific defining words were formally cemented into the text later on during the 42nd Amendment in 1976.
Now, to truly appreciate India's system, we kind of need to contrast it with other major global powers. Take the US. It's known for its rigid nature and the absolute supremacy of its constitution. On the flip side, you have the UK, which features a highly flexible nature based entirely on the supremacy of its parliament. India? Well, India uniquely blends both. It requires a special, difficult majority for some big amendments, making it rigid and stable, but it allows a simple majority for everyday adjustments, making it flexible. Plus, it operates as a federal system, but crucially keeps a unitary bias. Why does that matter? Basically, in a nation with dozens of distinct linguistic and cultural regions, you absolutely need a federal system to give states autonomy, but you also need a strong central government, that unitary bias, to prevent the whole country from fracturing.
That brings us to Section 3, Global Origins and Borrowed Ideas.
The framers of this document were essentially global architects. unabashedly shopping around for the best democratic tools available at the time. They didn't bother reinventing the wheel. They adapted it. They pulled the parliamentary government and single citizenship models right from their former colonizers, the UK. They married that with fundamental rights and judicial review directly inspired by the USA. Directive principles grabbed those from Ireland. They looked really closely at Germany's Weimar Republic for emergency provisions because they knew firsthand the fragility of new nations and the absolute need for safeguards. They integrated the concurrent list from Australia, the core ideals in the preamble from France, and the amendment procedure from South Africa. It's honestly a masterclass in global synthesis, taking diverse ideas and custom-fitting them perfectly to Indian realities. Let's shift gears to Section 4, the structural framework. Think of this part as the physical, architectural blueprint of the nation. The whole thing builds outward in a highly logical sequence. It starts right at the base by defining exactly who belongs. That's citizenship, handled in Articles 5 through 11. Once that's settled, it defines what specific rights those people actually have, the fundamental rights, in 12 to 35. Only after securing the individual does it outline the duties of the state to its people through the directive principles. And finally, the structure zooms way out to the heavy machinery of government, detailing the union executive, the distinct rules for states, and those crucial emergency provisions to protect the entire house if a crisis ever hits.
And all of that textual structure builds into a very real operational structure on the ground. To manage such a vast and heavily populated territory, power is broken down into a highly integrated three-tier system of government. You have the union government at the very top, followed by the individual state governments. But power doesn't just sit up high in New Delhi or the state capitals. It's decentralized all the way down to a third tier, local governments. We're talking village panchayats and urban municipalities, making sure that democratic governance actually touches the everyday lives of citizens right at the grassroots level.
And that leads perfectly into our final section, Part 5, Real-Life Impact. So it's pretty easy to get lost in the weeds with all the sheer numbers of articles and legal theories, but let's be totally clear. These are not just abstract laws. They translate directly into daily life. When we talk about fundamental rights actively protecting freedoms, we're talking about things like the right to education. That means millions of children are legally guaranteed a seat in a classroom, which literally alters their entire life trajectory. Directive principles aren't just polite suggestions. They guide state policy to push for tangible fairness, like striving for equal pay for equal work. And that federal structure we discussed earlier, that ensures that local languages, unique regional cultures, and diverse traditions are actually protected by state governments, rather than being overwritten by some distant central power. All of this magnificent architecture ultimately boils down to one profound truth. The Indian Constitution is not just a legal document. It is the soul of India. It's this beautiful, shared, enduring agreement that allows over 1 billion distinct voices, with totally differing beliefs, languages, and backgrounds, to peacefully move forward as one unified nation. Every single day, it performs the near miracle of balancing individual liberty with collective welfare. So, I'll leave you to ponder this as we wrap up. When you consider this vast synthesis of global ideas, perfectly balanced with a structure that is rigid enough to provide unshakable stability, yet flexible enough to adapt to whatever the future throws at it, how does that incredible blend shape the unique democratic identity of India today? Thank you so much for joining this explainer, and we really hope you walk away with a newfound appreciation for the incredible anatomy of